Hello everybody, I am the Indoor Adventurer. You are watching Simple and Keen, and today we are going to be talking about the third alignment axis for tabletop gaming, the dynamic of a cooperative and a disruptive player. Now, before we begin getting into the difference between cooperative and disruptive, I'm going to be discussing the first two axes of a character's alignment, as I feel that it is necessary in order to truly understand why the third axis is something that should be addressed. In tabletop gaming, most characters are assigned an alignment during the character creation process that can cause a player to lean one way or another throughout the course of the game. At the beginning of the game, you may decide that your character is a lawful good character, and you will do your best to play a character who combats injustice wherever they come upon it, ensuring that they uphold their ideals of honor and compassion. While alignment certainly played a much larger role in earlier versions of Dungeons & Dragons in that paladins could only be lawful good, we still see remnants of that time with certain magical items that are only capable of being used by characters of a specific alignment in the form of the Talisman of Ultimate Evil, the Talisman of Pure Good, and most all of the sentient items listed in the Dungeon Master's Guide also require a character to be of a specific alignment in order to be used. The first alignment axis is the nature of your character, lawful, neutral, or chaotic. While the descriptor of lawful might seem like it is more attributed to sociological scenarios, as laws are typically a social construct, it is actually far deeper than one would think. This kind of mindset extends past social stigma, as it can be ingrained in how your character views their own oaths or follows their religious dogma. Perhaps one of the best descriptions that I have seen for those mindsets comes from the AD&D Player's Handbook, where it denotes that for lawful good, a character must be strict in their prosecution of law and order, and that characters acknowledge that certain freedoms must, of course, be sacrificed in order to bring truth. Truth and life are of great importance, and you should strive to bring the benefits of society to all. In contrast, a lawful evil character might still find strict prosecution in law and order, but life, freedom, and truth are held as valueless, or at least scorned. By following the values of law, a lawful evil character seeks to utilize the system to their advantage to impose their will upon the world. In the Dungeons & Dragons pantheon, we can look at the deities Asmodeus and Helm, as they both represent law in their own right. In his lore, Asmodeus was the commander of a great army in the Blood War that had lasted for thousands of years. Originally an archangel, Asmodeus concocted a plan that would allow him to use the power of souls of the damned to fuel the strength of his forces. Asmodeus used his contract with the forces of good to help propel the strengths of his own forces at the cost of souls, as he utilized the systems that were in place to pass his own initiative to influence the multiverse. In the Forgotten Realms setting of Dungeons & Dragons, Helm is a lawful god of guardians, protectors, and protection. During the event that was known as the Time of Troubles, all of the gods were forced to walk among the standard array of races except for Helm. At this time, Helm was instead chosen to guard the entryway to the outer realms where those now mortal gods could regain their lost divinity. Helm was selected due to his dedication to the laws set down by the overbeing Ao, and he remained vigilant in his duties. When the mortal goddess Mystra attempted to pass Helm, he did not hesitate to kill her on the spot, as he had been told to let none pass under any circumstance. Even though he had killed Mystra, Helm exhibited the utmost responsibility for his duties, even though it cost him many followers throughout the Forgotten Realms. The second axis of alignment deals with the intention of your character, good, neutral, or evil. This is probably the easiest aspect of a character's alignment, as your character's intentions speak for themselves. Has one of your characters donated the majority of their money to a church or outreach program? They're most likely going to be a good character. Does a character spend all of their free time murdering NPCs within the town? Unless they were all zombies with really high performance skills, then you are most certainly an evil character. Because of this almost binary view of good and evil, neutral is a much more middle-of-the-road option, for as long as you avoid things that would be considered reprehensible in the eyes of your party members, then you will fit right at home in a neutral alignment. On page 7 of the Book of Vile Darkness by Monty Cook, Cook goes into what would be considered inherently evil acts, such as lying, cheating, theft, betrayal, murder, as well as a plethora of other things ranging from acts of vengeance to animating the dead and worshipping evil gods. However, Cook also brings up a really interesting idea in that depending on the campaign that you run, good and evil can be of completely relative understanding. For example, Perhaps you are playing through a monstrous character campaign, and you are all kobolds who follow the orders of a great copper dragon who is more susceptible to its own crafty nature. The kobolds might not realize that what they are doing was wrong as they follow the instructions of their great dragon, and as a result, these kobolds would be committing what would be perceived as villainous acts, even though they feel as though they are the champions of justice and the protectors of their way of life. In giant culture, for example, they believe that all things are either considered Mot or Mog. As described in Volo's Guide to Monsters, Mot is the term giants describe for ideas, behaviors, creatures, and objects that they consider good, holy, honorable, or desirable. For example, even though the giant hero Harshnag kills other giants, he would still be considered Mot as he is performing feats and acts of strength that would bring honor to the frost giants, as he is merely displaying his inherent strength over these giants and would be upholding the ideals of any quality frost giant. The counterpart of these Mot ideals comes in the form of Mog, as it embodies what other languages call evil, unholy, dishonorable, or undesirable. Again, if we are to look at these friendly frost giants, we can point to examples of what would be considered to be dishonorable in their society. We are even able to see an example of what would be a Mog frost giant in the form of the frost giant Everlasting One. An Everlasting One is a frost giant who has made a contract with a dark deity in secret or has performed a vile ritual involving troll blood and now has an almost unchecked regeneration property. As frost giants value honorable combat, this kind of ritual is the equivalent of an athlete using performance-enhancing drugs to gain a competitive edge. While an average adventuring onlooker might live by the blanket statement that all giants are bad, giants still uphold their own moral code that may or may not coincide with the alignments of smaller races. And now the third alignment axis. Cooperative and disruptive. Typically, the finger of blame gets pointed at the character in the group who has descended into chaotic evil to be the disruptive player, as regularly their ideology conflicts with the rest of the party. But I feel like chaotic evil is mostly used as a scapegoat because of the implications of what characters of that alignment typically do. However, I feel that rather than prevent a player from selecting any option on the standard alignment axis, you should instead understand whether or not this character is going to be cooperative or disruptive. If we look to the HBO series Game of Thrones, we can easily spot characters that would fall under the chaotic evil alignment, although they act very differently. For example, I would consider Lord Peter Baelish to be a chaotic evil character, for while he may have an outwardly friendly demeanor, Baelish is cold and calculating, and he will play the field between patrons to serve his own goals, and is not above betraying the forces he serves as a means of propelling himself towards his own goals. While he attempts to climb the ladder that is chaos, he works closely with others in order to achieve his own goals. While this still certainly is an evil action, Baelish is still choosing to cooperate with the different powers of the realm in order to achieve his own goals. This isn't to say that only a chaotic evil character can be disruptive though. Take for example the character of Excalibur from the anime Soul Eater. This character is the embodiment of King Arthur's legendary blade, and the exposition throughout Soul Eater prepares the viewer for a source of truth and justice. However, once the characters meet Excalibur, they realize quickly how much of a hassle it is to satiate his wants and requests in order to gain access to his power. The characters immediately recognize how disruptive this is in relation to anything that they are trying to do, as Excalibur continuously interrupts the main characters to single himself out as the main point of attention. Even the guardian spirits protecting the sword are extremely morose at the idea of even talking to this self-righteous and self-important blade because of his inability to work together in a cohesive manner with the other party members. A lawful good character can be just as disruptive, if not more disruptive, to an adventuring party, and I have actually seen articles in gaming magazines encouraging players to be disruptive. In the third issue of Game Master Publications, In Search of New Gods, author Graham Davis even encourages this behavior from lawful good characters. After all, what lawful good character in his right mind would venture down a deep dark hole with a bunch of chaotic evils? The DM should encourage players to keep their alignments close enough together to allow a reasonable degree of cooperation. If they won't, well, just let nature take its course. They will begin to see the advantages soon enough when the noise they make fighting amongst themselves begins to attract wandering monsters and patrols. In this article, it almost feels like Davis is trying to promote disruptive nature by a cleric or a paladin until they get their way, almost in the same way an unruly child would act. Because we typically see chaotic evil characters in the same light as someone like the Joker, who acts more like a force of nature in his unpredictable ways, it's hard to see that alignment combination working cohesively within a group. There are many ways that you as a player could possibly frame a chaotic evil or lawful good character to be able to work within your party's lines, but I feel like at that point, you as the character have to understand when you are being cooperative or being disruptive. For example, if a lawful good character spends the majority of interactions being obstinate because they refuse to even associate with a thing that they would consider their opposition, then they would be considered disruptive as they are hindering the gameplay experience of other players. This doesn't mean that you have to necessarily become best friends with a differently aligned character, but rather than focusing on disruption, you work with your fellow party members to reach an agreement. While an agreement between a chaotic evil character and a lawful good character does seem like it would be shady to say the least, it can still work depending on how these characters are played. For example, if the chaotic evil character you are dealing with is a narcissistic sociopath, they may be willing to work with this lawful good character as they view them as a valuable asset in the path to their desired outcome. Or perhaps there is an evil organization that has taken root in the cherished hometown of the chaotic evil character, and so that character approaches lawful good forces in order to help them oust the greater evil from their town. And while we could probably go into examples for each alignment on how you could frame either of them as cooperative or disruptive, I feel like ultimately that is up to the dungeon master to allow for that kind of behavior. While this may seem contrary to some of the other points that I made in my video on player agency, we have to remember that tabletop gaming is an act of communal storytelling. When a player begins to act in a disruptive manner, this will steadily take away from the agency of other players, as it might feel as if this player's disruptive actions are the root cause for many of the derailments they had not only on their adventures, but also at their table. With that in mind, I have never heard of a situation from players where they have brought complaints to me about their party members being too cooperative. And speaking of cooperation, I wanted to say thank you to everyone that has helped get the word out about this channel so far. It's been really humbling to see such a great amount of community response, and if you have any questions or comments about this video, feel free to leave them below and I will answer as best I can. And if you would like to see more of these videos, make sure to subscribe or check me out on social media as well, and remember, keep your wits sharp and your blades sharper.